right. Hey guys, welcome. Got a lot of you guys here tonight. A lot of you guys need some help. Well, so who's ready to fight? Yeah? Okay, so always. Great. Glad you're here. So obviously, tonight we're talking about communication and conflict in relationships. And I just want to give a little bit of a disclaimer that this is something that you are going to learn how to do for the rest of your life. But lucky for you, I am going to give it all to you in 30 minutes. That would be absolutely impossible for me to do. But you're on a lifetime's journey. And so welcome. You've made it. You're here. But what I do hope that you guys will get tonight is some foundational strategies that you can start using tonight to better your relationships and the way that you approach conflict in your relationships. Whether you're the type of person who tries to avoid conflict at all costs, or you're the type of person that comes in a little bit too hot, you'll have some strategies to be able to navigate that for any of your relationships. So we're not just talking about, like I said earlier, dating relationships. We're talking about friendships, your relationship with your parents, siblings, friends, coworkers, employers, professors, okay? So I have my little clicker here. Let's see if it works. Nope, not that one. What button is it? Right arrow. Where am I supposed to point it? We have help coming. This guy's the man. Oh, we had to turn it on. Okay. So just to let you guys know a little bit about me, this is me and my husband, Sean. We've been married for 3 years, which makes us relationship experts. Absolutely not. We are still learning how to do this every single day. And obviously, so what I said before is I am a therapist, so I work with young people. I work with young adults like you guys and teens. And in working with people, this is obviously a primary issue that comes up, is navigating relationship issues. And I just want you guys to know that this is something that we all deal with. I mean, we had to add chairs in this seminar, so all of us are dealing with this. I deal with this. This is a reality that we all kind of have to face, is how do we figure out how to do this well? So I'm going to be using our relationship as a little bit example, so you have a name or a face to the name. So let's first talk a little bit about what is conflict. Let's start with a definition. So conflict is the result of unmet needs or expectations in a relationship. And before you jump into a difficult conversation, you're going to start to get that feeling in your body. Like when conflict shows up, you're like, ugh, something doesn't feel good. Something feels off. Maybe I'm even overreacting to this situation, but something doesn't feel good and I don't know what to do with this. So before you approach the other person, it's important for you to have a conversation with 2 other people first. First, it's important for you to have a conversation with yourself. And second, it's important for you to have a conversation with God. I want you to ask yourself, when you get that feeling like something doesn't feel right here, feels like I'm not getting totally what I need, I want you to ask yourself, what are the expectations that I have here that are not being met? It's not just about the thing that happened. What is the expectation that I had that wasn't being met? What is the need that I had that wasn't being met? And are these reasonable expectations or needs to have in this relationship? That is a essential conversation for you to have with yourself, because if you can go into a conversation knowing these things, and you can talk about what your expectations were, what your needs are, instead of like what you did or didn't say, or what they did or didn't say, or what happened or what didn't happen, you are going to have a much more effective conversation. You also need to have a conversation with God. Because the thing is, not every need or expectation you have in your relationships is going to be met. It's just, we are not designed to meet the needs of everybody in our life. So it's important for you to ask yourself, am I going to God to fulfill these needs? Because if I can come into a conversation with somebody knowing that every need that I have is fulfilled in Christ, I'm going to approach that person a lot differently. So, another point of self-reflection is I want you to think about, how did your family handle conflict growing up? Okay, big surprise. The therapist wants you to think about your childhood. And just like there's no one right way for a family to be, there's no one right way to do conflict. Some families fight all the time. Some families don't fight very often. It's not really about how often you fight. It's about how you fight. Okay? And you are probably going to model or be impacted by the way that you saw this emulated in your childhood. So some important points of reflection for yourself are, how did my family handle conflict growing up? Because my family, or my conflict style, is either going to be a reflection of or reaction to what I saw modeled for me. You want to ask yourself, how did I see conflicts resolve? Did people resolve conflicts? Did they talk about it? Or did we fight, blow up, and pretend nothing happened? How did you see your parents or other adults treat each other during disagreements? Were there rules for how fights would go, or was it a total free-for-all? And were people allowed to disagree, or did one person always have to be right? So if you have this knowledge ahead of time, then you're going to have an idea of what some of your strengths and weaknesses are. And you'll start to get an idea also of what are the strategies that you want to emulate that you saw growing up, and what are the patterns you'd like to break. So before we talk into what to do when you actually get in conflict, let's talk about some things that you can do to bolster your relationships so that they can handle conflict when it comes. So let's talk about before conflict starts. So a lot of you probably walked in here with a certain relationship in mind. Okay? You probably wouldn't be here if you didn't. But maybe you don't. You probably had a certain relationship in mind, and I want you to imagine that there is a relational piggy bank attached to that relationship. I was supposed to have a piggy bank prop right here, and I forgot it. So pretend I'm holding a piggy bank. It was very cute. And in this piggy bank, there are deposits and withdrawals. The deposits are positive interactions, feelings, thoughts you have about the relationship. The withdrawals are negative thoughts, feelings, interactions that happen in the relationship. Okay? And successful relationships have a healthy balance between positive and negative. But how many positive interactions do you think it takes to weigh out a negative one? Any ideas? What do you think the ratio is, positive to negative? Let me hear them. 2 to 1? Any others? Huh? 8 to 1? She said 5 to 1. It's 5 to 1. Very good. So it takes 5 positive interactions to outweigh 1 negative interaction. If you know anything about human psychology, or you just take a little scroll on Instagram or TikTok, you will know that humans are negatively biased. I don't think that's a surprise. So it's going to take a lot more positive interactions in a relationship because the negative ones just carry so much emotional weight. So this means that you need to be doing significantly more positive things in your relationship than negative. And conflict is costly. Conflict, there's a lot of times you say things that probably weren't the nicest. They say things that are not the nicest. It's not just like, oh, well, we had a conflict, -1. There's probably multiple withdrawals that are happening within that interaction. So you want to make sure you've got enough money in the bank. So let's talk about how you can make deposits. Easy money. So the first way that you can do that is by expressing appreciation. This is really simple, really easy. You could do it right when you walk out. It's just saying thank you. And of course, you're going to say thank you when you ask your friend to pick you up from LAX at 9 p.m. on a Thursday night. You'll probably say thank you to your friend when they get you a birthday present. But I want you to think about saying thank you for the smallest thing you can. The most minute little action that the other person does that you see. So the smaller the thing that you can express gratitude, the more the other person feels seen and feels appreciated. So this sounds like saying things like, thank you for driving, even though they drive every single time you get together. Say thank you. Thanks for coming over to my house and making the trip. Thanks for dinner. Thanks for holding the door. Thanks for checking on me after that horrible final. These are really easy, quick ways for you to add positive value to your relationships. The other one, love languages. You guys might be familiar with this one. If you're not, go read the book because we can't get into that tonight. But basically the idea of love languages is that there's certain actions that carry higher emotional and relational significance to different people. And the 5 love languages are, I can never remember them when I'm supposed to remember them. Acts of service. Anybody you guys know? Quality time. Words of affirmation. Touch. Gifts. Yep. Okay. So you guys know. So it's important for you to know what your own love language is, but if you're wanting to add positive value to your relationship, just don't forget, you're going to make a lot more deposits if you're doing things that speak the other person's love language. Okay, so that's an easy win. The last one is responding to bids for connection. So you might say, what the heck is that? So a bid for connection they're gestures between people that signal a need for attention or a desire to connect. So they can be as small as saying, hey, the weather looks nice today, while your friend is sitting next to you, or as obvious as asking for help on a project. Okay, so positively turning towards people when they make bids for connection is going to add a lot of positive value. So I'll give you an example for this. It looks like, so if you've been sitting like with your friend, and so you guys are both looking at your phone, and you say, hey, the sun finally came out today. And your friend could respond in 2 ways. They could respond like this. Maybe you've gotten this one before. Uh-huh. How does that feel? Not the best. It's probably not a huge issue, but because it's happened to all of us. But if you are kind of making a comment like that, what you're hoping for is that the other person will respond. So the other way that could go is the person does this. You say, "Oh, it looks nice out today. The sun finally came out." They're like, "Oh yeah? Oh yeah. Want to go for a walk?" That is what it looks like when you turn towards somebody when they make these small gestures for connection. Okay? So, now let's get into what to do when conflict does arise. Do you guys know this? 96% of the outcome of conversations can be determined in the first 3 minutes. So what does that mean? The way that you start really matters. So let's talk about what not to do, the harsh start. This is generally coming in hot. So it sounds like this. You never listen to me when you're on your phone. It sounds like you're so forgetful. You just don't care. It can even just be your tone of voice, having a sarcastic or harsh or interrogative tone of voice, saying, "Hey, what did you do last night?" is different than, "So what were you doing last night?" Automatically, that's going to put the person on the defensive, and it's not a good way to start the conversation. So, just the other day, my husband and I, we were in the kitchen, and he was cooking, and I was doing the dishes. And I look over, he was kind of struggling with whatever he was doing, and I offered a very helpful piece of advice to him. And it was not received that way. So what do you think he did? He kind of had a little bit of a snappy retort. And me, knowing all of this and knowing that I was preparing for this this talk, guess what I did? I snapped right back at him. And he snapped back at me, and I snapped back at him, and all of a sudden we are locked. And we are talking at each other, we are not talking to each other, and it was very clear this conversation was going absolutely nowhere productive. So I left the room, and I went to fold the laundry. And just a little tip here is, if you are emotionally dysregulated and you need to bring yourself down, go do the laundry. The bilateral stimulation is very, very helpful for regulating your mood. A couple minutes later, he comes back in, and we restart the conversation. So if you find yourself in this place, it's totally fine. It happens to the best of us. And the best thing to do is just say, "Sorry, can we take a break and start over?" So when you start over, what the heck are you supposed to do? You want to do a soft start. So you can even just say this in your head, soft start, do a soft start. And that will hopefully be enough to remind you to come in a little softer. But it can look like expressing appreciation, saying thank you for something before you come in and make some sort of request. It can look like giving the other person a heads up that you want to talk. Now, you guys maybe do this thing already where you're like, "Hey, can we talk?" The other person, what are they going to say? No. Like that doesn't really feel like much of an option. So I would encourage you to phrase it like this. "Hey, do you think you have the mental or emotional space to talk about X issue?" What that does is you're automatically communicating empathy towards the other person. You're saying, "I want to talk about this, but I don't know if you are in the space to talk about this." Already you're putting yourself on the other person's side. You guys are working together against the problem. So let's talk about the next thing to avoid when you're actually in the conflict is criticism. So criticism is the global expression of negative feelings about somebody's character or personality. It's painting somebody with a broad, one-dimensional brush. Okay? And it sounds like this. You're so inconsiderate. Why can't you ever be on time? If you hear yourself saying things like you always this, you never that, you are in criticism mode. You're painting that person as one-dimensional, and that conversation is just going to be occupied by them defending themselves. And then you trying to tell them, well, that doesn't matter because you don't do it enough, and it's going to go nowhere. So here's what to do instead. File a complaint. Complaints are about specific instances that happen at specific times, as opposed to telling the person that you don't like the whole of who they are. So if any of you follow any sort of Instagram or TikTok therapists, you've probably heard of I statements. That's what these are. And there's 3 parts to a complaint. Here's how I feel about this very specific situation, and here's what I want or need or prefer instead. And you may have tried to use an I statement before, and maybe you're thinking, yeah, I tried to do that, but that didn't work. They still got mad. It didn't really work for me. And I would invite you to think about, what did you say as you're feeling? Did you say, I felt embarrassed, I felt hurt, I felt disrespected, I felt alone? Or did you use your feeling as a veiled criticism? I feel like you just don't care. That's not going to work. Something that can also be very helpful when you say something like this is telling the other person that you understand they didn't intend to make you feel this way. So I had a supervisor when I was in graduate school. I had an internship, and I really, really liked this supervisor. She was a great lady. And but I needed to have a conversation with her. There was something happening that I didn't really like. And so I figured, all right, well, I'm learning about this stuff, so I should probably do it. And so I figured, okay, I need to have a conversation, so I'll probably phrase it like an I statement. And so I came in one day, and I asked her, hey, can we talk? So I gave her a heads up. I said, hey, I have something I want to talk with you about. Do you think we can make some time to do that sometime today? And she said, yes, of course. So we sat down later that day, and she said, what's up? And you guys, I was really nervous. This was really, really hard for me to do. She was a superior of mine. And I said, hey, I know you probably have no idea this is happening, and you probably don't intend to make me feel this way, but I feel really uncomfortable when you share your opinion of our coworkers with me. Because I'm an intern, you're my mentor. I didn't even get to the third part because she was already apologizing. She said, Cassidy, I'm so sorry, you're right. I did not intend to make you feel uncomfortable. I just wanted to let you know that I trusted you. And I will be mindful of that. And after that, it was totally fine. But I tell that story as like, oh, yeah, that was really easy for me to do. It was not. I debated for a long time whether I was going to say something. I asked, kind of wondered, maybe it'll just stop. Maybe she'll stop. The problem will go away. I think it'll just go away. Or I don't really want to make her feel bad. This is going to be awkward. What am I going to say? Is it going to be worth it? And eventually I came to the point that, yes, this relationship was worth it. And it was affecting me enough to say something. And what I was afraid of is that it would make the relationship worse, more awkward. And what it really did is it strengthened that relationship. We were able to have a real conversation about something that was going on. So that's just an example of how you can use it. The other thing, last thing that I'm going to kind of give to you guys is a little tip. You can do what's called a reverse complaint. Now, this is where you share the good feelings you have about the thing that the other person did that you like to encourage that behavior more. So when my husband and I first got married, he was working the night shift and I was working during the days. When you first get married, I don't know if any of you guys are in here are married, but when you first get married, you're kind of like on your best behavior. You are cleaning up after yourselves. You're like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. We're married, la la la. Well, that doesn't last forever. And so it got to the point where my husband would leave for work in the afternoons, and I would come back home after work a couple hours later. And I was starting to come home, and the bed wasn't made. Usually the bed was made. The bed started to not be made. And there was dishes on the counter and all that kind of stuff. We're pretty neat people. And, well, that's what I thought. I thought we were pretty neat people. And when I saw that the bed wasn't made, it sounds so silly, but I was like upset. And then I stopped and I was like, why am I so upset? It's just the bed. And this is when I stopped and I said, okay, my emotional reaction to this situation is kind of out of proportion to what's happening. So let me stop and reflect. What are the expectations that I have here that are not being met? And I realized I had an expectation that the last person out of bed is the person who makes it. But we had never communicated that. So that was one thing that I knew, okay, maybe we need to talk about that. Second question I asked myself, what is the need that I have here that's not being met? And I stopped, and I realized the need that I had was being cared for. That was the need that wasn't being met. Because in that season of our life, because of our work schedules, we had to do a lot of caring for ourselves. We had very little time together. We were kind of on our own throughout the week. And so I waited for a couple weeks. So I wanted to see, is this really a pattern or was it a one-time thing? It was not a one-time thing. And so I said, okay, I'm going to bring this up. So I did. I started with a reverse complaint. And I said, hey, I really appreciate it when you make the bed before you leave for work. It makes me feel, oddly, sounds so stupid, but really cared for. Like you're thinking about me and wanting to make our space nice for me, even though you can't be here. And then I said, I noticed that hasn't been happening. Do you think you have the capacity to make the bed before you leave for work? What do you think the outcome was of that? I got pillow sculptures. And this kind of became a thing. Not an everyday thing, but every once in a while I'd come home and there's some sort of pillow creation. And what do you think that did for my need to feel cared for and thought of while my husband was gone? I got what I needed. Let me tell you that. So that's how powerful this can be. And I want you to think about, what can I do to affirm the other person of the things that they are already doing? Because I want them to know that I see that, and this is the value that it has to me and to our relationship. So I want to take a step back and kind of in wrapping this up, let's take a step back for the practical and go towards the spiritual. And I want you to think about, how does God approach us when we mess up, when we make a mistake, when we reject him, when we ignore him? How does he approach us? He approaches us with gentleness and with love. When he sees that us, the person who has rejected him, squandered our wealth, is coming home, he comes running out to us with open arms and throws a party that you're home. And when Jesus was walking this earth, he was confident in his purpose. He was also incredibly powerful with his message. He has expectations for what it takes to be in a relationship with him. But with every single person that he interacted with that wanted that relationship, this was his response. I see you. I'm with you. I see your need. Now go and sin no more. So I want to encourage you in closing that in the same way that God approaches us, let us approach the people in our lives with that exact same spirit. Let me close this in prayer. God, we thank you so much for our relationships. They're the way that you show us your love. And God, I thank you for this time where we could come and reflect and learn about how to better those, how we can navigate the tricky waters that come. And God, I pray a blessing over every single person that was here tonight. God, you would illuminate something in their heart. God, you would illuminate the way that you approach them. God, may that fill them up. May you fill every need of theirs so that they can go to the people in their lives with love and generosity. God, we thank you so much for this time and for this time that we can celebrate our relationships together as a community. In your name we pray. Amen.